Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, May the 10th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, David Williams. He's produced the program. It's the Come On With It edition. So if you're in the St. John's Metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So the owner, Tony Kenny of the Newfoundland Rogues, yesterday held a press conference pleading for people to come down to the Mary Brown Centre tonight for Game 3 of their playoff matchup against the Kitchener-Waterloo Titan. It's been pretty sparse crowds for the most part throughout the course of the year. We know what it means for some vocal home support. So they're facing elimination tonight, but one encouraging comment coming from Mr. Kenny yesterday is that the Rogues will indeed be back next year. So whether that be for the sports fans, specifically basketball, and or to have an anchor tenant at the Mary Brown Centre, good news. With a big game tonight, good luck to the Rogues. And checking in at the World Para Hockey Championships, Liam Hickey and Team Canada, they face China today. They've already secured a spot in the semi-finals, and Hickey has been outstanding throughout the entire tournament. So good luck. Interesting news coming from the city of Toronto. So apparently they have secured a WNBA franchise. So the league has expanded to 13 teams with the addition down to Golden State, and now 14 teams when they bring the game to Toronto beginning in 2026. So it looks like they're going to play out of the Coca-Cola Coliseum. That's the home of the Toronto Marlies as well. It's an 8,000-seater. The WNBA, regardless if you like women's sports or not, the women's basketball, college and pro, is really taking off. I mean, they had an exhibition game, or pardon me, a Canada game based with two American WNBA teams in Toronto and sold out some 16 or 17,000 tickets. Numbers are strong. Viewership is up. When polled, it seems more people are watching women's sports than ever before. So regardless of what you think, good for the folks in Toronto and surrounding area. Now, hopefully it won't be the mess that is currently Toronto sports. The Leafs are in disarray. The Raptors are a mess. The Jays are currently a bit of a mess. Toronto FC is certainly a mess. And hopefully the Toronto franchise and the WNBA is going to be a success. And that's going to be a formal announcement on the 23rd of May in the city of Toronto as well. Larry Tannenbaum and his deep pockets are bringing the team forward. All right, it was on this date in 1970 in the Stanley Cup final at the Boston Garden. Bobby Orr scores that famous soaring through the air overtime goal as the Boston Bruins beat the St. Louis Blues 4-3 for a 4-0 sweep in the Stanley Cup final. It was the Bruins' first title since 1941, but everyone who's a hockey fan could picture that particular goal. I mean, it's iconic. I actually have a picture of it in my home as well. All right, here we go. More possibly important issues. So if you drive around town or you drive on the province's highways and byways, you know full well that many of the vehicles that you pass, whether it be passenger vehicles or commercial vehicles, they don't look like they belong on the road. Now, you can't judge a book by its cover, but sometimes you can. So there was a checkpoint at the ramp in Stephenville, and as a result, 8 commercial vehicles were pulled aside for inspection. 6 of them were eventually taken off the road in full. So whether it be issues with expired driver's licenses, failure to produce or complete a pre-trip inspection, failure to complete a daily logbook, failure to obtain a special permit, but you know full well that this happens more frequently than not. And how many vehicles out there today that you'll pass, you'll probably think in your own mind that, boy, that looks like a bit of a rattle trap, and maybe, just maybe, shouldn't be on the road. Whether it be with the blown skin tires or the brakes that are failing, inspection and the struts are gone. So it brings forward the conversation that we've had in the past, and many people don't like to hear this because they think it would be yet another government tax grab. And that would be mandatory inspections at a certain age. Let's say 10 years old, the vehicle needs to be inspected at an accredited garage. I get it. People don't want to be paying for these types of things. No one wants to get in line to see more government cash grab opportunities. But how do we square that with the concept of public safety? Because if and when someone's involved in a collision, and as one of the contributing factors is that the vehicle that you smashed into or that smashed into you was completely unworthy of being on the road in the first place. So 6 of those commercial vehicles off the road, and I'll put it back out there for your consideration, whether or not you think it's a good thing regarding public safety, and understanding that, yes, be money paid to the government for a mandatory inspection at a certain age of your vehicle. What do you think? Let's talk about it. All right. And sticking with transportation for a second. So a fire aboard the Flanders yesterday. 8 of the workers are being monitored. They were brought to hospital, regarding smoke inhalation, what have you. I don't know what the update was. I kind of heard out of the corner of my ear Jerry Lynn Mackey talking with Fred Hutton this morning, and I don't know what was said, but hopefully everyone's okay. So the Flanders was built in the Marystown shipyard in 1990. It has been pretty serviceable over the years. And of course, they're going to put the Beaumont Hamel back on the run, but for now, it's just a one ferry service with the Legionnaire. You wonder what the future holds. There's no timeline regarding putting the Flanders back on the run. But there's always going to be concerns, voiced by many, about the people in charge of the ferry service here in the province and their lack of experience in the marine operations. So I know Mike, who's a frequent contributor here via email certainly, and sometimes live on the air, talking about a variety of things, but he does focus in on management of the provincial ferry system. So hopefully all of those 8 are indeed okay, and we'll find out more as the day rolls on. Sticking with transportation. We're told that last year's pilot program of speed cameras at Mount Pearl and Paradise is going to be expanded to other parts of the province. I think it's a good thing. Again, I probably find myself in the minority here, but if you drive around the province, it's out of control. Reckless aggressive driving is rampant. So just for context, in 3 months last year in Paradise and Mount Pearl, 94,000 warnings were sent out. Now, of course, no monetary fine attached to it, simply the concern that you were going at least 10 kilometers an hour over the posted speed limit. So that's going to be expanded, and hopefully there will be fines attached this year. I mean, I would imagine the cost recovery model for the installation and the compilation of the data from these speed cameras will pay for themselves. Toot swit, but what do you think? All right. So people will talk about the fact that they think the government did little to nothing to help folks that were, for instance, in Tent City, provision of power, access to bathrooms and what have you. And yes, there was indeed vandalism that took place in the bathrooms there in Bowring Park, and now it's struck out in CBS. So it's been a pretty popular spot, and it's a beautiful little community park out in Conception Bay South, and as a result of vandalism, they're going to shut the change rooms and the washrooms, lock them up at 7 p.m. I've heard from a couple of concerned folks that say, look, I go to the park and I don't get off work till 6 o'clock. So when I have supper and I want to take my children out for a little bit of play in that park, now the bathrooms are gone. But I guess when you add up all the associated costs and requirement of security, if they're lighting fires and beating the place up, I'm not sure what the town can do other than try to close them up and to preserve some property tax dollars for the ongoing repairs, putting out fires and the smoke damage and the fire damage and the walls being beat up and the toilet seat being ripped off. So they're closing the park at 7 p.m. Or pardon me, they're locking the change rooms and the washrooms come 7 p.m. If you want to talk about it, those type of related matters. We can do it. All right, moving on. We've had conversation with the province's consumer advocate, Dennis Brown, on a variety of topics, certainly this keen focus on Newfoundland Power and their rate applications. We were scheduled to have a conversation with this gentleman named Doug Bowman. He's an energy consultant who was set to appear in front of the Public Utilities Board in June to talk about smart meters. So Newfoundland Power says their most recent estimate for provision of smart meters is in and around $100 million. And Mr. Brown and Mr. Bowman say, well, on top of the fact that they already have plenty of our money for ongoing infrastructure upgrades, that smart meters are good for the consumer in particular, and I would suggest also helpful for the utility. Basically, what they'll allow people to do is to understand how they pay, when they pay, what they should be operating, like a dishwasher, for instance, and how they can maybe save themselves on their power bills. So, in basic terms, if you know that you can turn on your dishwasher overnight, not to be operating at peak hours, then you're possibly going to save yourself some money. especially during the winter, they're running at capacity for the most of the time. So that comes with a lot of monitoring and concerns for failures. And so wouldn't it be also good for the utility if we were able to, spread out our power usage, not all be operating at the very same time, the peak hours, all hopping in showers, I've got the stove going and the dishwasher going all at the same time, putting on our laundry all the same time or in and around the same time. So Mr. Bowman, I don't know what happened to that scheduled interview. Maybe I should reach out to Dennis Brown to see if we can get him on. So it really feels like it's something that I'd be 100% interested in. I have no problem, putting on the dishwasher or putting on my laundry in the off-peak hours if I can save myself a few bucks on my power bill. And, of course, we can also talk about the fact that there's a couple of rate applications that are going to be considered by the PUB. In January, Newfoundland Power proposed a 5.5% increase in customer electricity rates by 2025 and an even larger one down the road. The pub thinks it's going to be an even bigger increase than that. So smart meters, yes, it's going to cost, but some of the upgraded technology and meters that Newfoundland Power brought forward in 2017, Mr. Bowman says they're soon going to be obsolete. So why replace those old meters with what will be, in short order, as he says, an obsolete piece of technology? But smart meter, if I want to save some money, I think I'm all about it. How about you? You want to take it on? Let's go. All right. A couple of strange things. The Bank of Canada. So sometimes there's headlines that come from the bank that you just scratch your head and say, did anybody really need to update me on the financial strains that people are talking about and feeling across the country? So now they're talking about the strain on renters. Yeah, of course. Vacancy is down, rent is up across the country. Then they're talking about folks who are going to have to renew their mortgage over the next 2.5 years and what that's going to mean for the increase in their mortgage payment. From 25% increase in your monthly payment. If you're on a variable mortgage rate, it could be 60% higher. So, yes, thanks, Bank of Canada, for filling me in on what everybody already knows. All we have to do is check our credit card balance and or our bank balance. Then we go on to see a survey that was done by a website called money.ca regarding credit card balance. And apparently, pretty significant here in this particular city of St. John's. So there's only a few cities in the country that have a heavier burden. Residents in this city, about $3,500 on the average in credit card debt. And I would suggest some people listening to the program this morning would be thinking, I wish my balance was as low as $3,500. So obviously, if people are having to use their credit card for the necessities of life as opposed to just emergency situations, which, people think maybe, just maybe, it should be for emergencies, but let's be real. People are leaning on their credit card for all the obvious reasons. So the only cities in the country that have a higher debt per person, Barrie, Ontario, Kelowna, BC, Calgary, Alberta, and 6 other cities in Toronto round out the top 10. The delinquency is also rising, and that is translated to if you haven't made a payment in 90 days. And delinquencies are up 17% in the city of St. John's. So, of course, people have been relying on their lines of credit, maybe family, maybe non-traditional lenders, you know what those are, and, of course, their credit card. Unbelievable stuff. Stick with the banks for a second. We spoke to this story, I think it was probably last week, regarding the amount of harassment and bullying and threats that are happening via e-transfers. It's pathetic. It came down to a point where this one particular fellow was harassing his ex via e-transfers, threatening messages and transfers that could be as low as 1 cent. And consequently, she had blocked him everywhere else, and he ended up murdering her. So not to say that every threat that's included in the e-bank transfer is going to end up in murder, but the banks here in Canada, when you add to the fact they're being fined and several of the banks are being investigated for money laundering that's fueling whether it be organised crime and or potentially terrorism, and these are not my hyperbolic comments, these are coming directly from the Banking Association and law enforcement. But add to this e-bank transfer. So the Canadian banks say they're looking at a homegrown solution so that they can curb what's happening. Oh, give me a break. So they're already doing it in many parts of the world. In Australia, they're using this artificial intelligence-based program. It's been made free to banks across the world, but yet we're talking about looking for solutions. Absolute nonsense. The Sterling Bank in the United Kingdom allows users to block messages attached to payments from specific people. So something as simple as that. It's out there, and apparently this happens frequently. When I first read the story, I thought, really? This is a thing? Apparently it's a big thing. And the banks in Canada, it's time to get with it. We understand the concerns of intimate partner violence, domestic violence, and if people could just transfer as little as 1 cent to someone who they've been blocked from harassing in other platforms, but are allowed to do it through the bank. The technology is already available for the banks to utilize and to curb or to stop this in full. You know, the artificial intelligence will look for some of the key abusive words and they'll block that transfer. But yet, here in this country, we're apparently still considering and looking for potential solutions when they're right under your collective noses for bank CEOs and executives. Unbelievable stuff. How are we doing on the phone, Dave? There's a bunch of stuff I wanted to get to here. What does this even say? Okay. Interesting story about the establishment of an Irish famine heritage trail. And that's going to take place with the opening of a ceremony this afternoon at the Basilica. So apparently the trail is going to be marked by bronze shoes. So these are, mimicked after traditional shoes that were found in the thatch in the 19th century, for all the immigrants that were coming to various parts of the world. The Irish diaspora is from Australia, here, certainly in this province and in this country. So I'm curious to hear what that ceremony is going to look like today. But, they go back to, even to try to be as historically accurate, as they didn't fly the shoes over, they brought them over by ship. And we've heard the stories of some of those desperate conditions as people fled the country after a destructive mold flattened the potato crops. So they were talking about 15% of the passengers died on the journey. And it wasn't a story of victimhood. A great quote coming from this particular person. I believe it's the Irish ambassador, Eamon McKee. This is not about victimhood. This is about people who are resilient, who are taking control of their own circumstances in desperate conditions. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that all works. So talk about it being the longest heritage trail in the world upon completion, from here all the way to Australia. And the bronze shoes are really a very interesting symbol that they're going to utilize here. So we can take that on if you're so inclined. Of course, the Irish have been coming to this province since somewhere in the 16th century. And we don't know exactly what the breakdown is of the population. We do think of the province as predominantly Irish when it's predominantly English. But this is a very interesting story that I'm going to chase a little further. And in a random related Irish note, it was on this date in 1998 that members of Sinn Féin, of course the political wing of the Irish Republican Army, the IRA, they voted to accept the Good Friday Peace Accord, ending decades of bloodshed in Ireland. So a couple of links to be drawn right there. All right. So apparently there's a pretty significant outbreak of whooping cough. We had a lady on the program last week talk about her fact that her child has it and many others in school have it. It's highly infectious. And when we saw cases that were maybe 3 or 4 per year, now there's some 50 documented cases. And of course, not everyone's got a clinical diagnosis. But it is apparently a huge big deal. Since that call, we've had a few emails saying, my child also has it. Now, it's particularly dangerous for small children under the age of 1 who are too young to be immunized. It's part of the standard immunization program through school, but it's apparently becoming a huge, big problem. And it can persist. They call it the 100-day cough. So if people are considering maybe getting their booster doses as adults or what have you, and if you're unwell, please just stay home. Some of those fundamentals we've been talking about all our lives. If you're not feeling well, don't go to school, don't go to work. Wash your hands, cover your coughs and sneezes. But apparently the whooping cough, and here we are just in early May, and from 3 to 4 cases per year, now 50 documented clinical diagnoses of whooping cough have been brought forward. So pretty amazing stuff. Last one before we get to you, or a couple of quickies. I'm not sure what to say about this. So NL Schools has been working over the past few months training staff to use injectable and nasal spray kits of naloxone. And now naloxone kits are going to be distributed to the junior high and high schools across the province. I guess it's better to have it on hand than to not. But what that really does speak to is such a sad state of affairs when it comes to the prevalence of drug use, especially the toxic drug use that we see and the resulting addictions and overdoses, which are spiking in this province. Again, the war on drugs has proven to be fruitless, but isn't it an amazing turn of events where all of a sudden we've got children that are falling prey to these seriously toxic, addictive, deadly drugs? I've been in communication with a family that are originally from here, but now living in Ontario. Their 12-year-old is addicted to cocaine. 12! I know when we were young, there was people doing drugs. But I never saw a cocaine or a needle until I was well into my adulthood. But, from smoking weed and hash to using synthetic lethal drugs, and we've got to offer these protective kits. And like I said, it's probably better to have them than to not. But junior high and high schools, naloxone kits. Oh boy, what a time to be alive. Very quickly, Rex Murphy, dead at the age of 77. Rex graduated from Memorial University, went to Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar. Controversial figure, but of course, if you're going to be as outspoken as Mr. Murphy was, then controversy comes with it. It's part and parcel. Regardless if you agreed with anything that Rex Murphy said or wrote, he was obviously highly intelligent, eloquent, contributor on CBC. He wrote for the National Post and in the Globe and Mail. And people can think of Rex whatever they like. I've met the man on many occasions. And one thing that can't be denied is that he was a terrific writer, agreed it or not, a very eloquent person. Obviously, the intelligence flowed to the forefront, regardless if it was on television, on radio, and or in print. So condolences to Rex's family and his friends. People will refer to him as a bombastic, controversial figure, but he was one of ours. And my condolences to his friends and his family. And of course, it's Mother's Day weekend. If you're lucky enough to still have Mom around and a good relationship with, or you haven't spoken in a while, maybe this weekend is the time to reach out. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, and specifically to my mother, who I'm lucky enough to still have around, and to my wife and my 3 sisters, all of whom are mothers. We hope you have a terrific, pampered weekend. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to kick it off, talk about mental health care shortages. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Apparently, I'm going to begin this morning on line number 3. Cyril, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
Want to talk about gravel pits and people dumping garbage into them.
Okay.
I live in, we call it down this way, the Southwest Iron, leaves Northwest Brook, and a lot of communities in between. We go to Gooseberry Cove, Southport. And just between Queen's Cove and Long Beach, there's a fairly big gravel pit. Just up the road from it, there used to be a dump. And oh yes, by the way, now I called about this last year. I called your show, and I called the people, East End management, the Waste Crowd, and MMSB, and I was out to a guy last year. He was supposed to come and have a look at it, I guess it started off to be a gravel pit like you see in a lot of places. They were getting one part of the area, there was a contractor. He started up a few years ago, took a lot of fill out of it, but he leveled it off. But the road leading into it, they didn't close it off or anything, and his area was left. And I must say that it wasn't a rock, any boulder, anything there. You could pick it up in your hands. Everything was clean. And then another part of it, you go in for I guess Department of Highways, when Igor was down there, they had a big area cleaned in there that they had tons and tons of fill put there because they were using it for fixing the places on the road until they cleaned it up. And digging in, now leading off of the main road going in there, there's the one road goes off, but it branches off. And so last year it was the place the contractor had, there was a dryer and a little bit of garbage, not much. And the place where the high roads had, there was a bit of, probably someone cleaning out a bit of property for the Bella House. There was, because not very far away the communities are, for old stumps and stuff that you would dig up. And bit of sawdust, like you see someone sawing wood or something, but there was a few hot water boilers in there. Now the year, there's more hot water boilers with the government side, Chesterfield, and the part that the contractor owned, there is another dryer, there's a pile of household garbage, kids' toys, the stuff in around the river now, old pipes, or probably trailers, laminate flooring, and you name it, it's there. And you can, from the main road going down, how come I knew it was there? Because, all the time, I guess, the snow, you don't eat this stuff, but since the snow went, driving down the road, you can look over there and see stuff, door garbage and everything. So anyway, I was coming down there about handy 2 weeks ago now, and saw it there, went up, and sure enough, and I said, "This is getting bigger." A full-fledged dump now, I would call it. So anyway, we called out to the MSB, and we phoned around now. If he just forgets what he was called, but I was talking to a guy last year who had to do him, like going around. If there's anything like this, you call him, you come have a look at it, and whoever owned the pits or whatever, maybe they may clean it up, or even the high roads themselves, and block off those places that you can't get in there, can't drive in off of the road. But apparently that never happened. And the guy I was talking to, I just forget his name. I had it wrote down, but I guess over the winter I just destroyed it. Just nothing. And we done a lot of phone call. I phoned my own member and was talking to them, and they made some calls. The secretary did, and we're just I'll just tell everybody now this morning. We'll see them on the open line. It's free. It's a free for all. Get in there and get your garbage out, because apparently there's the government are in them. They got nobody or nothing to do about cleaning those places up or getting and like I said, buying it off. Like there's a lot of places they got to put those big boulders out, and then you can't get in there. They've had to do it down here. We had a place down there. The fire department got a building between some of the communities there, and the kids used to stop there. There's a great place to use your phone. You get good coverage, and eating lunches daytime when they get out of school. They had to buy it off. Every other week they had to go there and clean up the garbage. And that wasn't big stuff. That was just paper, and they'd be there smoking and throwing out the old remnants from stuff was in their cars, and not only kids, teachers from the school or whatever. People would be there because that's where they go and smoke and whatever. And same thing with the bus stand around. We got 2 or 3 bus stand arounds down there at the end of the communities, and the high road stand around out over the bank is all on one side of this going up on your right hand side when you leave Southport to go to the Trans-Canada, and there's all water, as steep as kind of banks down over. People just slow down there, throw stuff out to the windows. You can see it driving along.
Oh, of course, you can see it everywhere. There's a piece of property that we own. I went to have a look there one day a couple of weeks ago, and right out in the middle of everywhere, didn't even make an effort to put it somewhere in out of people's eyesight. Friggin' washing machine. Right?
Yeah.
So people, they'll blame it on high tipping fees, and maybe the dump is closed, whether it be because of the new waste management strategy, what have you. Those are all excuses. People know better. They're just too lazy to get out of their own way, and they're willing to throw all their old grout into the woods, whether it be on the woods roads themselves or just down some trail. You can go almost anywhere in this province and find unnecessary garbage in places that were once considered pristine and now are no longer because people are awful. Even when we just talk about the basics of litter, I can only speak for this city, but it's just unnecessarily up to your neck in garbage and in litter, and it's embarrassing, and it just gets worse seemingly year over year. So whether it be businesses that don't put out garbage containers and or they don't empty them when they're full, and or the crows and or the gulls, whatever the case may be, people, it is not Tim Horton's fault that your coffee cup ended up on the ground. It's your fault.
Sure, that's true. Paddy, all those communities down there, I'm on a committee here in my little town here, Gooseberry Cove. We have a place, and like everybody now is again out and talking about the little thing we're going to have this summer, little festival or whatever you might call it, to get people together, and all those I've been all over Newfoundland. I don't think there's been a community in Newfoundland that I haven't put my foot in. And at the end of a community, either going in or coming out or somewhere, somebody got a building or something has fallen down or there's garbage or whatever, an eyesore. and God only knows we got them down there. But those people don't care. They don't look out and say, I think I'm going to clean this up. And there's people with nothing else to do. Like, they could clean it up. And
sure.
Money is not an object for to get this done. Because, like I said, I call you here now, we're not very far from Clonmel. We 45 minutes. And when we go into Clonmel, we pass around via dump. Now, I know there's problems. No black garbage bags, cut up cardboard, not open, only open certain times of the week. And I even says to myself, and I make no wonder people that's throwing it out to the gate, because you go there and it's not open. But still, they advertise, I guess, the times and the week and everything. It's the place is closed or open or whatever. But nevertheless, and a lot of those places you see with people with stuff, maybe got a $60,000 or $70,000 truck and trailers and everything in the door, but that don't stop them from piling up garbage.
Oh no, of course not. I mean, if people are willing to throw it out, it doesn't matter if the dump hours are convenient or not. If you're willing to do that, then all the excuses in the world don't matter. Cyril, I got to leave it at that. But I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for the call.
Yeah. Yes, Paddy. Well, anyway, if I like for somebody in the government or something to clean it up or give us a call, see what they're going to do, because this is only going to escalate.
Oh, yeah.
If you give me another second, we had 2 or 3 dumps down there years ago, and now everything goes in yarns, and they come and spend tens and thousands of dollars and cleaned up those places, put in fill, lighted off, put up signs that you wouldn't know dumping and all this stuff, and the public just goes down and starts up their own dumps. So, you know what I mean? It is a bit ridiculous. So, like I said, if there's someone in the government right now wants to give us a call and say that they're going to do something about it, we'll be appreciated.
Of course you would. I appreciate your time. Thanks, Cyril.
Yeah, very good.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that place is up to your neck, and it's just completely 100% unnecessary. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Good morning, line number 4. You're on the air.
Oh, good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
I'm just calling. I'm looking for a little bit of information. Maybe you might be able to help me or one of your listeners. I want to know, is there such thing as a will, or like a box in a kit that you can get?
A home kit? Yes.
From either
there's several options.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you name one or two?
I can get the name of them, but they are perfectly legal and legally binding in Canada. There's a couple of things that people have to remember. Number one, you have to be judged and deemed to be of sound mind, and that comes with the presence of 2 witnesses. You have to be at the age of majority in the province in which you live. You have to have it signed in the presence of 2 witnesses. It's probably a good idea to sign every single page in your home will. Then you have to, this is important because we live in a very much an online world, but you actually have to store a physical copy, and only the original copy is the legally binding, but make a copy and store it yourself in addition to the original copy, and those 2 witnesses also have to sign it. Let me see if I can get your name. There's a couple that I'll recognize pretty quickly as being notable. Well, Canada Wills is one. I should have been able to remember that. And it's as simply as it's said and written. So Canada Wills, and that's CanadaWills.com. Then there's another one here. And there's lots of advice. You can even get them in some of the big retail stores, as far as I can remember. And I'm just coming up with an article here that talks about the fact that they are indeed legit. You just have to be careful with how you operate. But just go to CanadaWills.com and you'll be able to search it out there. You can also just go to your Google bar and put in Canada Home Wills and Estates Kits, and you'll come up with a variety of options.
Yeah, Patty, I'm not using electronics or anything like that anymore.
Okay.
So is there anything local here in town, like anything that I could make a phone call and make a...
Yeah, I think you could probably buy them at the big retailers. If I'm not mistaken, I've seen them on the shelves at Walmart.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty sure.
Oh, okay. All right, then.
And if you don't have any luck at that particular store, you get back to me, and by that time I'll come up with another few options for you. But they're completely legal if done properly.
if they're done properly, right? Yeah.
So, and you have to use wet ink. You can't do it in crayon. You can't do it in marker. You can't do it in pencil. You have to use what they call wet ink. And two people that can deem you to be of sound mind, over the age of majority, and it's always a good idea to sign every page of the will itself. Store a physical copy. That's the only way it's going to be legally binding. But the kits are widely available and they're very cost effective. Like as opposed to pretend that my will, that I can save it in the so-called digital cloud. That's not a concern of yours if you're not using digital world like computers or what have you. So just a paper copy. When you get the kit, you'll have the paper in the kit itself, and just keep it as a paper copy, as opposed to what some people might do is scan it and store it online. You can't do it. You actually have to have the physical copy so that the person who's going to manage your estate upon your death has the copy that you had in your hands, that you signed yourself, and the two witnesses that you need.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the witnesses can be anyone, just a friend, or maybe a doctor.
Yep. And they have to be also the age of majority. So in this province, 19.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's all you really need, and it's pretty easy to take care of.
All right. Thanks, Patty, so much for your time and taking the call.
My pleasure. Good luck.
Good luck, and you have a good day,
The
too.
very same to you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 7 and say good morning to the Development Officer with Regional Philanthropy and Partnerships in Eastern Canada. That's Alison Fitzgerald with Kids Health Phone. Alison, you're on the air.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm doing okay, thank you. How about you?
I'm good, thank you.
So it's really a vital service, and we're glad it's available to the country's youth when they find themselves in crisis and need some support. But it's also extremely concerning to see just the volume of calls and texts you're receiving at Kids Help Phone. Give us an idea of the surge in numbers over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so our demand continues to grow. In 2023 alone, Kids Help Phone supported young people over 4 million times. And since the beginning of 2020, that number is over 19 million. And for some context, in 2019, Kids Help Phone supported young people 1.9 million times. So we continue to see that growth, especially since the pandemic, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, 2023, we're talking closer to 5 million than to 4 million. The number I saw was 4.7 million interactions.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not a simple question, nor is there a simple answer available. But are we looking at some of the trends as to why the surge in the numbers? Maybe just more kids and youth in the country know about Kids Help Phone. Maybe their friends have utilized it and given it a thumbs up that it was very helpful. Can we understand what some of the trends look like and why we think the spike in the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, we had that spike right around the pandemic. There was so much confusion and unknown for youth in our country. But I definitely think Kids Help Phone does a great job of making sure that youth who do reach out are leaving satisfied with their conversation. 85% of youth that reach out to Kids Help Phone find their conversation helpful. And 75% of youth that reach out to us share something with Kids Help Phone that they've never shared with anyone else. So it's definitely a trusted space for youth in Canada. Youth are reaching out to us about a variety of things. There's big conversations, and it can be something as small as having a bad day at school. And I think Kids Help Phone does a really good job of being an inclusive environment for anyone, no matter what you're going through.
Who answers the phone?
Yeah, so our trained counselors answer the phone, so they have backgrounds in social work, counseling, that sort of thing. And we have about 200 or 300 counselors at Kids Help Phone.
When we talk about access to mental health care, and it's a big concern across the country, we used to use 1 in 5 Canadians are struggling on that front. Now we're saying 1 in 4. And of course, those numbers would also be reflected in the youth population. One of the things that people talk about, though, is it's been beneficial to go to Wellness Together or to call a crisis line, or in this province called 811, or to call Kids Help Phone. But one thing that seems to be a big part of the conversation is the continuity of care. How does that get addressed by Kids Help Phone, or is that even possible inside this type of conversation?
Yeah, so Kids Help Phone is a one-time service. Of course, you can continue to call back, but there's no guarantee that you'd reach the same counselor or anything like that. So we are kind of we're not that continuation of care that you might get with a traditional counselor or therapist, but we try to, address each situation as its own. The counselor's always great at making sure they try to get as much information as they can to help youth in that moment.
Do you keep information on file so that there can be the potential for some understanding of who's calling, what they've called about in the past, or do you start anew every time?
we start new every time. Our services are completely confidential, and that kind of adds to that feeling of trust that youth feel they can reach out to the service, they can be anonymous. So yeah, we don't track information from service users.
Yeah, and I asked that on purpose so that people would hear that, because that's a real concern, especially if someone's willing to so-called bare their soul for the first time to talk about one issue or another. What happens when there's a real crisis and there's conversations regarding suicide ideations, what have you? In many circles, in many corners, there's an obligation for that to be reported to somebody, whether it be to law enforcement for a wellness check or what have you. How is it handled when someone in crisis regarding the possibility of suicide contacts Kids Help Phone? What happens then?
Yeah, so if that does come up, our counselors will urge the youth that they're speaking to disclose some of that personal information so that they can send appropriate emergency services if they are necessary. But of course, if the youth doesn't want to disclose that information, then our counselors are trained to deal with those calls and to work with the youth to de-escalate the situation.
Is it more a case of being talked through the crisis that has provoked the telephone call, or is there also the concept of talking about coping strategies? Because I do think that when children or youth are armed with some potentially helpful coping strategies, maybe that reduces the need for them to want to reach out to Kids Help Phone or otherwise. So how does the coping strategy process work with Kids Help Phone?
Yeah, our counselors are equipped to deal with those situations and to help provide healthy coping strategies. We also have lots of resources on our website that they can be directed to. So yeah, that's what our counselors are trained to do, to try and de-escalate any situation at hand, but also to help the youth so that they are equipped to handle these situations in their everyday life. So
when you introduced the text option, can you give us some sort of breakdown of the call volume versus texting? Because obviously quite popular amongst the youth, and I would suggest my phone is in my hand a bit too frequently throughout the course of the day. Can you help us understand the breakdown there?
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of texting interactions, probably more so than phone right now, because that is what youth prefer to use. And the thing with the texting too is they can have a quick conversation from wherever they are. They can keep it anonymous versus a phone call. They might want to find a quiet space. And if they're in a house where maybe there isn't a quiet, confidential space that they can have that phone call, they can text in instead.
Is it easier or better for a call versus a text? Do the counsellors have a preference one way or the other? Because I know the youth probably do, given the fact I have a couple of youth in my family. So is it as easy to offer some counselling and support via text as it is via telephone call?
Yeah, there's no preference. It really is up to the youth. And like I said, our staff is trained to kind of handle those situations no matter what method the youth is reaching out by.
So just this past Sunday, the 35th anniversary of the national organisation, they aim to raise some $4 million. In this city alone, $15,000 were raised in the walkout in Bowring Park. What are some of the strategies for raising as much as $4 million? Because I think people should be well aware that Kids Help Phone has been a cornerstone of access for the country's youth. So what's the path to get to $4 million?
Yeah, so we had our big event, BMO Walk So Kids Can Talk, on Sunday, which is part of that $4 million. So we've raised $3.7 million and counting across the country, and over $24,000 of that came from Newfoundland and Labrador, which is amazing. And folks can continue to fundraise until the end of May for Walk, which is great. And May is also Mental Health Awareness Month, and as we're talking about, demand for Kids Help Phone services continues to grow. So if you're able to donate to BMO Walk So Kids Can Talk, that will help ensure that Kids Help Phone can meet the unique needs of youth in every community in Canada. And if you're interested in donating, you can visit walksokidscantalk.ca.
I appreciate your time this morning, Alison. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Alison Fitzgerald, Development Officer with the Regional Philanthropy Team in Eastern. Let's see here. One more before we get to the break. Line number 5. Jason, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
Yes, first-time caller, long-time listener.
Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. I'm a director of a student group, Revival at Reed Music in Mount Pearl. Mm-hmm. And on Sunday, May 26th, we're going to be putting off a show in support of the Calvin Heights United Church. So that's a volunteer event. Tickets are $20 at the door. All proceeds go towards the parish. And the show starts at 7 o'clock. So you can expect a wide range of spiritual music and some classic country, some Newfoundland-style traditional music. So, looking forward to a great night of entertainment. And also, Tyler Young is going to be making a guest appearance and performing some country classics and gospel as well.
So, is there a cost?
$20 at the door.
Okay.
So, doors open at around 6:30, and the show will start at 7.
So, just in case people weren't tuned in right from the beginning of the call, one more time the details, the where, the whens.
Yeah, so it's Calvin Heights United Church. It'll be Sunday, May 26th. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. Show starts at 7. The show usually goes for about an hour, hour and a half, and it's followed by tea and coffee and some homemade baked goods as well.
I really appreciate the time as a first-timer, Jason. Thanks, and break a leg.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Take care. All right, bye-bye. There we go. Let's take a break. When we come back, there's, stories right across the world, including in this province and this country, protests or rallies when we talk about the conflict, the war in Gaza. One such rally is coming up this weekend. It's in support of Palestine. We'll talk about that right after this break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Lorraine Michael. You're on the air.
Thank you very much, Paddy. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Thanks for asking. How about you?
I'm doing okay. A little bit of a cold, so I apologize for my voice. But why I'm calling, of course, is because of the absolutely dire situation in Gaza, which is getting worse day by day. And just to fill things in a bit for folks before giving the information about the events this weekend. Right now, according to the latest news that I got on Al Jazeera this morning, there's only one day of fuel left for hospitals in Rafah, where Israel currently is really bombarding the people. The UN Relief and Works Agency, which is the main body for bringing resources, food, water, etc. to the people. I saw the spokesperson from the UNRWA say this morning that they're down to their last reserves. There's only a few days of food and water left. Israel has blocked the one main entrance into Rafah while they continued to bombard. Last night, apparently, it was just a horrible night of more bombing. So it's a dire situation, and I think people are aware that around the world, thousands of people are turning out to show their concern for what's going on and to demand a ceasefire. We've been having rallies here in St. John's every Saturday, and there's another one tomorrow at 2 o'clock at the Harborside Park. The rally starts there. There's a march to the courthouse, and then so it's usually an hour and a half or so. And coming to a rally is a way of showing our government that we want them to do more. We want Canada to do more. We want Canada to speak out, number one. More than it's been doing. Canada still hasn't recognized the state of Palestine, the statehood of Palestine. And, when it comes to what it could be doing at the moment, Canada has not yet brought in any Palestinians under the family reunification program that we have. They also have abandoned Palestinians in Gaza and in Egypt. And because we have not had people getting out of Rafah with the support of our government. So it's a dire situation. I really encourage people to come out tomorrow to the rally. Always wonderful speakers and a lot of energy. We have many Palestinians here in St. John's. And another event that's happening is today at 1 o'clock. There are students at Memorial who are holding a die-in at the clock tower at the university. And I encourage people who are available to go there as well. To me, what's happening speaks for itself. It's hard to understand why it has continued for 7 months. Right now, this afternoon at the UN, there will be a vote in the Security Council with regard to the recognition of the state of Palestine by bringing them in as a full member of the UN. 4 countries from the EU, Ireland, Spain, Malta, and Slovenia, they're really leading a move to try to get this recognition to happen and pushing European countries, because the EU has not taken a firm stand as the EU. But these countries have. Ireland and Spain have been amazing, actually. So I really encourage people to turn out. I encourage people to realize that government does pay attention to when we're out on the streets. They do pay attention when we send letters and when we send emails and when we make phone calls. And Canada has slowly, improved its voice over the past 7 months, but still has a ways to go. Mm-hmm. So there you are, Patty. That's what I have to say today, I think.
Ms. Michael, there's a lot to this, obviously. It becomes really one of the subjects of bad faith conversation. It really has been virtually unmanageable to be able to talk about this conflict in any pragmatic, realistic terms. For people to believe that this is only as a result of what happened on the 7th of October is completely ignorant to history. It just truly
Absolutely.
is. And then it goes even further. What the campus protests and stuff, and asking for universities to divest in any interest in equity holdings regarding Israel, all these types of things. But the problem then becomes quite clear. If there's a pro-Palestinian rally, then, of course, people will label folks there as pro-Hamas. I can't for the life of me understand how we can't differentiate the issues regarding women and children who are not members of a terrorist organization being held captive virtually in their own state. And then on the other side of it, of course, if you are pro-Palestinian rally supporter, then you're automatically branded as an anti-Semite. So we've been unable to navigate this as a cultural conversation because the first thing we do is, number one, ignore all the history and the complexity of this issue, and number two, all we want to do is brand people as opposed to talk about solutions. It's truly frustrating.
It is frustrating, and as an individual who has been standing out publicly about this, I've had those labels put to me. I've had even friends whom I've had to try to say to them, it's wrong. It's not anti-Semitic. I'm speaking out against the Israeli government and Netanyahu, who is recognized by countries around the world, publicly recognized as a liar, as a person who's behaving the way he is just for the sake of his own political gain. And we've had almost 37,000 people killed in Gaza because of him and his trying to hold on to power. This is not stuff I'm making up, and what you've just said is not stuff we're making up. It's historic reality, present reality, and past history, going right back to 1948. And I'm so glad that you brought that out, and that because that's the discussion people have to have. They have to understand, what happened. Yes, on October 7th it was awful. However,
of course,
what happened over 76 years to get to the point that happened?
Yeah, and then a real groundswell in 1967, so there's a lot to this. What I also do think is a fair component of this conversation, and it's not about the assignment of labels, it is difficult to understand why countries in close proximity to the Gaza and the West Bank and predominantly Muslim countries aren't doing more as well. Because it's fine to say that Ireland, even you mentioned Ireland and Spain, but Ireland has a real furious anti-immigration sentiment that's rising very, very quickly and very, very loud in that country. It is, I think, a fair question as to why closer countries, Muslim-dominated countries, aren't doing anything in some fashion and or not doing enough, I think, is the international suggestion. Do you have any comment on that? Because, if we were talking about countries closer to Canada and maybe built-in allies, economic or otherwise, then we should be at the very forefront of the conversation. Is it fair to ask why Muslim countries aren't doing more for their fellow Muslims who are under siege?
Well, a couple of them are, in the sense that they are certainly involved in having the negotiations happen. For example, Egypt and Qatar are two of those. The bottom line, and it's horrible when you think about it, the bottom line all comes down to politics and political situations and what countries are gaining or not gaining from taking action. I want to put the question out about the U.S. Why is the U.S. still feeding Israel and Netanyahu with the armaments and the bombs. Now, this week they put a pause on a shipment, but they haven't stopped. And they've said, that if Israel doesn't if Israel starts a total assault against Rafah, that they will stop. Well, I don't know what that total assault looks like to them, because I think it has happened, really. So the politics of all of those countries and the politics of the U.S., that's the bottom line. They look at what benefits them as a country, and it's reprehensible. I agree with you. But that's what it comes down to, and that's what I hate about the whole situation. You have the analysts who are saying if this wasn't an election year in the U.S., Biden would be behaving differently. Well, that tears the heart out of me when I hear that, because it's a reality. So, it's not, I don't have a final answer for you, Patty, but the discussion has to happen, but it does come down to politics.
And it usually does, and I would extend that one more word as political will. Political calculations based on support and votes for or against, but just the political will to do what you deem is right, whether we're talking about Gaza or anything else in the world. I appreciate the time. Give the folks the details where and when for this upcoming rally.
Yes, the rally tomorrow, 2 o'clock, starting at the Harbourside Park on Duckworth Street across from the National War Memorial, and the die-in that the students are holding at MUN today, 1 o'clock at the Clock Tower.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And I appreciate your time, Danny. Sorry, Patty, and the discussion that we've had. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, let's go ahead and take a break. When we get back, Robert's next to talk about wind energy. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Robert, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thank you for taking my call.
No problem.
I'd just like to talk about the wind energy proposals and the concept of social licensing. I'm just wondering, do you have any further information on what that implies or relies on?
Well, it's a pretty broad definition associated with social license. If someone wants to break it down to first past the post, 50% plus one, I don't think that's necessarily a fair definition of something as large as a social license. What do you think?
No, I don't agree with that at all. It seems to me, I've been doing a lot of research on this since I've been calling in a few times and trying to get as informed as I can, which I implore everybody else to try and become educated on the facts outside of just the media and the news networks. But in my research, I can see during conversations and contact now that EVREC is finally responding to our concerns after 3 months, they seem to be using the initial letters of support that were signed by the municipalities as their social license, which to me, those letters of support, as I mentioned before, appear to be signed under duress, I would say.
Why do you say that?
Community out here. Well, like, for example, out in our community out here, we brought our concerns forward to our municipality, and their conversation with us, and they actually issued a letter. Sorry, let me just go on speakerphone, so if I start breaking up for a second, that's why.
Speaker's not great.
No, I just want to read an outtake, and then I'll come right back on again. It said here that in this letter that they issued, there's a lot more in it, but I'm just going to read a few highlights. It says, we were also told that the project was a done deal, and we would be informed of the progress and developments going forward or pertaining to the project. And then it says, it is our hope that when the time comes, we may have some say in the things like distance from the town, number of turbines, profit-sharing options, etc. There is, of course, no guarantee that any of those things can be influenced by council. So that, to me, it says that from the response from EVREC, they claim that they have social license because they have these letters of support from the municipalities, yet the municipalities themselves are bullied and being told that if they don't support these projects publicly or sign the letters of support, they will not receive any community enhancement vibrancy funds or whatever they are referring to them as. And as well, that if they don't sign it, then, like I said, they won't have a seat at the table. So that, to me, seems very unethical and a very manipulative tactic in order for these companies to move forward with the progress.
Well, I mean,
as well,
part of it is, Robert, that social license is conceptually part of these types of negotiations and or proposals and evaluations, but it's an elusive concept that I don't know if we can even hammer down to say whether or not anyone has achieved social license for anything. A new mine, these wind proposals, offshore oil, those types of things, very seldom does it become part of the conversation and or something that can be carefully measured. So how do you think we should approach it? If you think the way that it's currently being presented by EVRAC is unfair, how should it be presented in your personal opinion?
Well, my personal opinion, I think that the government should be engaged, using their platform Engage NL, in order to inform and collect the inputs of the residents themselves, instead of relying on the proponents to do their open house meetings where, where they're not providing accurate information. And for example, at the last meeting that was held 2 weeks ago in Botwood, some of the answers were just blatantly false and lies, and some of them were very misleading, even on the NTV coverage that Colleen Lewis did. Ravi was quoted as saying there will be 400 direct employment jobs, which in their economic impact statement, they state there will be 248 direct jobs. And as well, I overheard a lady asking a gentleman at one of the booths, are there any known health effects from the turbines themselves? And he said no, which is proven to be incorrect because of vibroacoustic disease, which has been determined can be resulted from the operation of these wind turbines, which I think I've mentioned before. And as well, the representative at the Strum booth, the Strum Environmental or Strum Consulting, the lady there said that they won't have any water treatment facilities on site, which to me is just absurd, as I've been through the World Energy GH2 environmental assessment submission, and that one states that there will be water treatment, and I don't understand how you can use 11 billion liters a day, or 11 million liters a day, without removing the trace minerals. And for an example of that, you can just imagine your coffee pot or your coffee maker and all the scaling that builds up in that just using the tap water. So if you have 11 million liters a day going through an electrolyzer unfiltered, then you're going to have massive scaling build up on these electrolyzers. And another thing that was misinformed at the meeting from Strum was the same lady told me that they can absolutely determine the number of bats using their sonar and radar equipment, which was contradicted by the environmental scientist that was with the Halapu booth. And again, it contradicts the information that I received from my request at World Energy GH2 that was answered by Stantec. And they stated that because of the radar systems, it's impossible to know if the same bat or bird flies by 20 times or if it's 20 different bats flying by. So the misinformation and the incorrect answers from this last public meeting was just mind-blowing. It appears that they're just trying to answer the questions just to get the approvals process completed, and they don't seem to be knowledgeable of what they're actually presenting or consistent in the information that they're presenting at all.
Fair enough. I suppose I'm having a hard time getting past the social license business, because that's been one of the key arguments being made on the Port Peninsula. So folks who are in opposition to the project say that they've got the overwhelming support of the public. World Energy GH2 would say the exact opposite. And even if you use something like Engage NL, which could be helpful, I mean, I don't dispute the fact that, more public engagement with government-related sites could be illuminating or eye-opening, whatever the right word is here. But I don't think we're ever going to arrive at that position of having social license granted or denied. I don't think so anyway. And if so, maybe I'm just profoundly wrong there, but I don't know how we get there.
Well, one thing during my discussions, we've been trying to contact a lot of politicians, and we finally had a few conversations a few months back, but they're not really getting back to us anymore with concerns, which is another distressing point. But one of the Liberal ministers that we chatted with, they indicated that if the public in the areas do not want these projects to develop, or if the First Nations groups do not want these projects to proceed, then they will not proceed, full stop. And she said that the government does not want another repeat of Muskrat Falls. So the social licensing process that they're having, like I said, it's just strong-arming, manipulating our municipalities into feeling I'm going to say just not empowered or useless, and it seems like they don't really have any value of the residents' way of life or their input in these projects. They're just focused mainly on the approval process and to try to attract investors.
Is using Muskrat Falls in the same sentence or paragraph regarding the wind proposals also some form of manipulation? Because they're two distinctly, patently different things.
Muskrat Falls, sorry?
Yeah. I mean, I know people try to draw a connection or direct correlation between Muskrat and these wind proposals, but I don't even know how people have arrived at that.
No, I'm not sure about that either. Like, Muskrat Falls was initially developed in order to close down Holyrood and increase power capacity to our province.
Yeah, and to go around Quebec and all those types of things. But the issue there is I'm the customer, as opposed to I am not the customer here, which I think just distinctly makes them different.
Well, that's actually a great point, because this project is sorry, I'm just going to put you on speakerphone again.
Yeah, very quickly, because I do have to get going soon.
Yeah, I'll try to cover my next 2 points very quickly. So there's one quote that I have from Chief Missile Joe that was in a an article from the Independent 9 or 10 years ago. So he says that the article is called "You Have the Change You Owe to Newfoundland." So I'm just going to read one little paragraph that he has, and this is from Chief Missile Joe himself. It said, "The government will not stop doing what it's doing because they know all they have to do is talk about jobs, the economy, bringing people home from the oil patch in Alberta. They will not stop until the people of this province take this oath that you was just read and all stood to and say, we love you, but we don't. At least I don't think so. How can we stand and say we do and let the things happen that's happening in the province right now?" So, again, this is a similar situation. Now, that was referring to the fracking on the West Coast, but it's the same principle that's happening right now. And I also want to add that because this is a 100% export economy, it really feels like it's not going to benefit the residents of Newfoundland at all, in my opinion, and it really is another example of the poor leadership throughout the history of Newfoundland over the last 75 to 90 years since Britain took away our independence, which is all covered in a fantastic book by Greg Malone, Don't Tell the Newfoundlanders. And if you don't have time to read that book, you can just go on YouTube and watch an interview that was done by him when you're on a reading, and it'll give you more perspective on the whole system. But basically, it appears to me that the Canadian government and our provincial government are working together to keep Newfoundlanders as typically a banana republic, I'll call it. So you can search that on Wikipedia as well.
But this is of our own doing. There's no one doing this to us. We're doing it to ourselves, if that's the way.
Well, that's right. And the problem with that is that in order for these grand policy schemes to take place, you do need local participation. And as an example, we have Joey Smallwood was here, and he's the one who was forcing or trying to convince people that Confederation was a good thing for Newfoundland. But now we have a Premier Fury who's going around announcing, saying that this is going to be beneficial for Newfoundland. There may be some people that will benefit, and those will be the people that are the higher-ups and the elites, similar to what's happening in the fishery as well. So everything that's happening in Newfoundland, it just keeps going back to it doesn't seem to be benefiting the people.
Okay, so I will add to the whole concept that we're doing it to ourselves, whether or not that's the right way to put it or not, irrelevant. The government of Canada is also involved because some of the tax subsidies for so-called green technologies, green energy, alternative sources is part of this conversation, and it will be a huge part of the final investment decision. Robert, anything else very quick, because I really do have to go.
Yeah, so one more thing. I just want to make sure that everybody can go out and look online, read some information, get intelligently informed about the facts, look into the history of the hydrogen companies, and two big ones to look into in their financial histories would be Ballard Power and Nikola Motors. So those two companies were billions of dollars, and now they're basically worth nothing because the whole concept of using hydrogen as a replacement for fossil gas is just not feasible. And the economies in the past have proven it over the 20 years and the last 5 years with Nikola Motors. So
appreciate the time, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and you have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Before we get to the break, Dave wants me to take two. Greg, you're on the air.
Yes, Paddy. Hi. I was at Walmart about 10 minutes ago, and I found what looked like to be a set of house keys left on a cart. So I turned them into the customer service desk. So if anybody's missed them, check the Walmart Mount Pearl. Mount Pearl, Walmart, house keys. If you left them in your cart, they're at the customer service desk. Greg, thanks for doing this. No problem, Paddy. Have a good one.
You too, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's take a break. Yesterday we had a conversation with the Salmonoid Council of Newfoundland and Labrador talking about aquaculture, open pen farming, proximity to salmon rivers, what that's meant for return, specifically at Con River. Joining us this morning on line number 1, right after the break, is Jamie Baker. He's the Executive Director at the Aquaculture Association. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the Executive Director at the Newfoundland Aquaculture Industry Association. That's Jamie Baker. Jamie, you're on the air.
Good morning, sir. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
Good. Oh, great. I just wanted to kind of a little aside here to pass along my condolences, obviously, at the news of Rex Murphy's passing. I always tell people, I spent 20 years in journalism in this province, and the 3 things that got me into it were reading Ray Guy stuff, a chance meeting with Ed Smith when I was in high school, and, of course, watching Rex Murphy deploy his fairly unique brand of verboseness. So I had an opportunity to meet him once and got to talk to him. It was a good memory, and I think Mark Rich probably said it best. He may not always agree with what he said, but boy, could he say it. So condolences to his family this morning, of course.
Fair enough. I actually have met him on several occasions. In one such occasion, I actually drove him from Calgary to the Jasper Park Lodge where he was given a presentation. And for half of the trip, he was really quite conversational, which was enjoyable. And, it was well, for me, personally, impossible to keep up with Rex. But, and I think Mark did put it right. And I think I said something similar off the top of the show this morning. When you're going to be as outspoken as Rex Murphy was, automatically that comes with controversy. And he wasn't afraid of it. Whether or not you agreed, the intelligence and the eloquence were there for all to see. And that's just nature of the beast when you stick your neck out there. And people will talk about bought and paid for stuff and all those things which are kind of tangential. He was one of ours. And for many people, they're quite sad today. My condolences to his friends and family.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that 100%.
Okay, let's get
into your other stuff. Yeah. So I didn't hear much of what was said yesterday, honestly, Paddy, but I have seen the report that was referenced. So I don't know if you have a specific question, but I can certainly give you my reaction to that.
Sure. I mean, what they're doing is they're talking about the counting fence data at Con River. And the salmon population declined by 92% over the last 4 decades. And they're talking about the proximity of open pen farms to that particular river. And not just looking here, but specifically here at Con River, but similar research that's been done in Norway, Ireland, and Scotland, and the like. And they're saying that the consequences are dire, whether it be about sea lice and the use of antibiotics and escapes, that the proximity of those pens to those rivers is the number 1 contributing factor. I guess that's the summary of what was offered by Mr. Bishop yesterday.
Okay, well, that's a good summary. That's pretty much what I expected would be the summary. From our perspective, having read the paper that was published, I mean, look, there's nothing new in that work, right? There's no new science that was actually carried out, and there's significant data gaps that were acknowledged in the report that need to be figured out as well. Those parts are all part of the baseline. That's fine. The data that's in that paper goes back, quite a ways, but it really kind of ignores the modern data and advances, and it really seems to understate, quite surprisingly, the impacts of climate change and warming waters. I mean, these are impacts everyone is seeing in the marine environment right now. I mean, it's very well established. Everyone knows this. Across the Atlantic, salmon have been in decline for decades. And we're talking way before any farming started. So I can tell you our members personally, from how we attack all these sorts of issues, is we do the work on the farms and on the sites. You go back and look at what we've done the last couple of years. I think it's a pretty long list of things, and I won't get into all of it, but just a couple of items. If you go back and look at our recent code of containment going back to 2022, we didn't lose one single salmon off farms in Newfoundland waters in 2022. Not one fish, not one. And we haven't had a significant at-sea escape in several years. Now, why is that happening? Pure dumb luck? No, not at all. We're deploying things on our sites like these steel core nets that are far more resistant to predators. We got a whole bunch of new equipment and training that's been deployed, which limits the room for human error and takes into account the kind of nasty weather we often get in this province. And as part of that, we also have third-party engineering requirements on all sites now, and those enhance containment as well. We meet regularly with the Code of Containment Group and with our federal and provincial regulators, and we're also doing a lot of monitoring and traceability work that'll be coming. The farming practices, too, I think it's important to note that. Like, those have changed significantly in the last couple of years, and those aren't really acknowledged in this paper, and that's fine because they're looking at a specific time period. But the way we've done it is we've got a new farming practice, which means fish spend less time in the ocean, and that improves fish health and assists with containment. And as a result of all these things, we've seen pretty dramatic declines in the need for treatment, Paddy, because farmers now have more green tools than they had before to combat, sea lice.
Such as, we talk about lumpfish versus antibiotics?
No, there's a whole bunch of things. We have cage skirts that prevent lice from getting in at certain depths. We have the cleaner fish, of course, and the lumpfish. We have mechanical processes. And this year we're actually testing out a new water circulation system that may not only combat sea lice, but also work to mitigate some of these water temperature challenges we're seeing, which is pretty exciting. And, we've had several harvests of fish in recent years that haven't required any antibiotics or a single treatment of any kind. And I think those things need to be recognized as we go forward and start to do some of the work on the data gaps that are, included in this particular piece.
River temperature, overall water temperatures, mass mortalities that have happened in the past in this province. Is the Aquaculture Industry Association suggesting that there is no relationship with the decline in returning salmon to the rivers and your industry?
Look, I think the challenges we face are all clear, but right now the primary challenge for everyone, and I don't think anyone can argue this, is what's happening in the ocean. The water temperatures are huge. We saw surface temperatures in different bays around the province last year approaching 22 degrees. I mean, that's a heavy-duty increase in temperatures, and fish struggle in that no matter what kind of fish they are, be it wild or farmed. So, I mean, you think about it, for example, in the farm sector, we're mandated to have aeration on our sites to increase oxygen and help fish survive when surface temperatures decrease or increase fairly dramatically. Last summer, as I said, we saw 22-degree temperatures on the surface in some cases. Now, if survivability can be impacted at that temperature, what does it look like in a river when you start going up towards 24, 25 or more? And there's no way to support survivability. So, look, I've said this before, I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it. In the face of this climate change and warming oceans problem, at some point, all of us, and I mean all of us, wild harvesters, anglers, government, ourselves, everybody, we're going to have to put self-interest aside. We're going to have to work together if we're going to have any success. I mean, look, I might be a bit naive suggesting that, but I firmly believe there's a role we can all play with all the tools and resources we bring to the table. And if we don't figure that out, Patty, there won't be any farming, there won't be any angling, and wild fisheries will be deeply affected also. I think that's priority number one for the next number of years.
And there's a lot to that has some relation, but limited relation with the aquaculture industry, because things like water temperature, hook and release, all those types of things, they're kind of different conversations. So help us understand why it's so different on the west coast of the country versus the east coast of the country. And what some of the one of the comments made by Mr. Bishop, which I'll get you to react to, is, for instance, if they have done away with renewing licenses in Norway for open pen farming, some of that Norwegian money is flowing to this province. Why? Because they have the opportunity to do it in a less expensive fashion versus doing it on land, which comes with additional costs and amount of water to be used and those types of things. Look at Per Grieg. He brought his money here because the operations he had in Norway, when the license expires, it doesn't get renewed. How do you speak to that?
Well, in the Norway perspective, I mean, you're looking at an industry there that's fairly vast. So when you're looking to expand, there's not a lot of room left for expansion in a place like Norway.
No, it wasn't expansion, though. It was not renewing licenses that expired, including some of his.
Well, I guess it depends on where they are. I'm not familiar with the Norway situation with license renewals on the ground, but I do know that they understand that they're going to have to branch out in other areas of the world in order to expand their own operations, which makes sense when you think about it at that level. The BC situation, I've told people this 100 times. Everybody thinks it's a science thing. It's not a science thing. If you recall correctly and you go back and you look at the history, back when it was originally announced by Bernadette Jordan, there were court challenges launched against it, and 2 federal courts decided that this decision was not based on science. This decision was based on politics of the region. And it looked at all the studies that were done and everything that was in place and concluded that that was the way it was. And then at the same time, if you look at the CSAS people who were involved in doing all the science reviews at that time for BC, they were aggrieved enough that they went public in the Globe and Mail in May of 2022, I believe, just to say, look, whatever reasons there are for slowing down expansion or preventing expansion of farming in BC, it is not science-based. It's based on, the conditions on the ground, i.e. politics. So all those things factor in, right? And we get it. And people say, what's the difference in here in BC? I always go to this one. You can shoot a seal in Newfoundland. You can't shoot one in BC, even though they have the same struggles with them that we do and the same potential for development of a market. It's just a different place in Canada. That's all there is to BC.
But the answer to that, it's based on politics versus science. I think the exact same thing could be said here, because the decisions to proceed have been basically political. They will sell it as job creation, and some communities in this province would probably have shut their doors if it wasn't for some of these operations coming to town. So I think your comment regarding BC politics can be mimicked or mirrored in this province because the decisions have been made have been political.
I wouldn't say that in all cases. We have the science that kind of backs up everything we do on all levels here, right? Like, things don't get done randomly just for political reasons. We have, and I'm going to tell you, it keeps me awake at night to dealing with the stuff that I have to deal with. We have the most stringent set of regulations for farming, for shellfish and finfish, that I've seen anywhere in the world. Like, there's no getting around this stuff and doing anything improperly. Everything that we do is based on science. And if we don't do it that way, then we're not really living up to our mandate, right? So, and if you look at what we've done the past number of years, like, everything is considered carefully. Everything is done with sustainability in mind. There's no mass expansion into areas that, haven't previously had any type of stuff. There's a lot of consultation. There's a lot of science work and oceanographic work that goes into all that. So you don't get a farm unless you've got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. That's as simple as that.
I appreciate the time this morning, Jamie. Anything else before we flag off to the break?
No, just quickly, I wanted to say exciting development hopefully next week. Some folks from here are going to be heading to Scotland for Aquaculture UK, but one of the primary things for that is they're going to be investigating commercial production of seaweeds. I'm pretty excited to say that we have some very strong potential for that here in the province, and I'm happy to see what it looks like at a commercial level and supporting our members here and hopefully getting that industry off the ground. I think that'll be really a boon for farming in the province in the next coming years.
I appreciate the time. Thank you, Jamie.
Always a pleasure.
Take care. Bye-bye. Jimmy Baker, Bye-bye. Executive Director of the Newfoundland Aquaculture Industry Association. Very quickly before we get to the break, I was saddened by the passing of Greg Donaghy as well, which I haven't had a chance to mention here on the programme. Of course, one of the beloved members of the Carlton Show Band, originally from Northern Ireland, but of course made his home here, and his lads were here, terrific hockey players, the two of them. So his death, I believe he died on the 2nd of May. His wake happens today, Friday, May the 10th, from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Call's Funeral Home on Marchant Road. There's going to be a funeral service on Saturday morning, 10:30, from St. Teresa's Church in Monday Pond. So one of the family members wanted me to put that out there, and I'm happy to do it. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning. I'm calling in about the mental health of youth in Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'm very concerned because I know back in 2008, Child Advocate did a report on the shortcomings of the J4D at the Janeway for mental health for children.
Okay.
And here we are 16 years later, and where has it improved? There was recommendations put forth by the Child Advocate, and I've been calling in for the past 5 years to you, Patty, about the Janeway, about trying to get services for your child, parents. We see we're in a crisis right now. Children are committing suicide. Children are turning to drugs and alcohol addictions. Children are being assessed when they're harm to themselves, to their families, and it's like the child is not being heard or the parent is not believed. And I'd like to know why that stigmatization is there within the system, because unfortunately we have a lot of drug-addicted children because they're trying to cope with mental illness.
That can be one reason,
yeah, and a lot of children, some children have trauma from their upbringing, and it's not the parents' fault. There's many parents that are good parents out there, and I don't understand why our government will say if you suspect abuse, and then there's no investigation. A social worker is going in and saying to these children, oh, we can take you out of your home environment if you want to live on your own. That's setting children up for failure, because at age 14, 15, or 16, whatever the case, they don't have, their brains aren't developed. They don't have the knowledge. I know when I was 16, I didn't know nothing. I didn't know how to care for myself. is setting children up for failure to be on the street, homeless, number one, drug and alcohol addiction. You got children with mental health who are not getting properly assessed. Like, what does it take? 16 years? Because you know what? I went to the Janeway, and it frustrates me to see all this still a problem 16 years later. They didn't believe my child. When my child exposed things going on in their life and was suicidal, and I heard a mom last week saying that her child was suicidal, was going to harm her or the grandparents or the mom and dad. What does it take? I can't believe that these so-called professionals who are supposed to be clinical professionals, I can't believe that they're sending children out of a hospital environment when that's failure in the biggest way. That's why we have so many children who are drugs addicted, coming out of group homes, traumatized, foster care, traumatized. The Inuit children, same thing. Social workers saying, oh, well, we can put you in a home by yourself and give you $150 a week. There's more going on in the system. It's got to do with MUN and to do with social workers, what they're being taught to do. Go in and remove children to set them up for failure. There's no support, as government puts out in an ad, that we support families. Where's the family being supported? It's not. And it's time it stopped now.
I appreciate the time this morning. Thank you for calling. Hope you're well.
It's not, Patty?
What?
It's going on. These social workers are destroying our youth. And the hospital, Janeway, is letting 16 years later.
I'm not 100% sure what that 16-year reference is. I'm sorry.
I know. I have a family member that went there 16 years ago, and here we are in 2024, and we're no better off when it comes to protecting children and youth of the province in Newfoundland and Labrador.
I appreciate the time, and hopefully that's not the case. Take good care.
It's very sad. It's very sad, and the system don't include the parents, and there's no oversight. There's no oversight. Nobody listens to the parent. Nobody listens to the child. And the child advocate will say that children are seen but not heard. And we're still in the same stigmatization and systematic issues still today.
I appreciate the time. Thank you for calling. Take care. All right, there we go. Let's get to the break on time. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 4, Ryan Cleary, you're on the air.
Morning, Patty. To you and your listeners, sir. Thank you very much for taking the call.
No problem.
Patty, I'd like to offer my condolences to start to the family and friends of the late, great Rex Murphy. Now, I say great, emphasize great, because it didn't matter if you agree with his point or not. We can all agree that Rex Murphy was a wordsmith of the highest order. He was a great columnist, a great broadcaster, a great orator, a great loss to Newfoundland and Labrador. I might also mention, Patty, that Rex's passing comes close, just a few days away from the anniversary of the death of another of our greatest writers and satirists, the great Ray Guy. So 2 fantastic minds and 2 absolutely massive losses.
I can't argue with that, although given very similar approach to satire and holding people to account, maybe a little different focus for either, because what I mean by that is Ray Guy would hold everyone to account. Did not matter what the color of your lapel pin was. That was completely and utterly irrelevant, but it maybe wasn't quite the same for Mr. Murphy, though I think I get your point.
Well, they both shared a huge love for Newfoundland and Labrador.
Oh, sure.
That's a fact, too.
Oh, I wouldn't deny that.
Patty, I'm calling in today about the price of cod.
Sure.
Now, the price of cod to start the 2024 season has been set at 97 cents a pound. That's for grade A. Grade B is 38 cents. Grade C is 20 cents. Most fishermen, as you know, get somewhere in between those prices. I've heard some fishermen say they got higher than that before the moratorium, higher than the 97 cents grade A. So my main point here, and I want to bring this up for context, I want to highlight the fact that 97 cents a pound, Patty, to our fleets for grade A, now that compares to an Urner Barry price this week of $8.93 a pound Canadian. That's for 8 to 10 ounce fillets, cod fillets. If you compare that to snow crab, the crab price to our harvesters today across the board is $3.45 a pound. The Urner Barry price this week is $8.52 Canadian a pound. So cod, the price to fishermen is 97 cents a pound, but the price of cod on Urner Barry is higher than the price of snow crab. Cod is worth more on Urner Barry than snow crab, but our fishermen get less for cod than snow crab. So from my perspective, the price of cod is ridiculously low, especially, Patty, when you consider that the FFAW and the offshore sector, they both put in requests for cod harvests this year of around 25,000 tons. That's, and you know this, that's double last year's harvest. So double the quota for a summer price of less than $1 a pound. And there's a broader point here, Patty, and that is that cod should be graded at the wharf, not when it arrives down the road at the plant sometime. And this is just another example, another way that the pricing system, the fish pricing system here in Newfoundland and Labrador is not only backwards, obviously, but it's broken, both. I've also got a point, Patty, I want to make about snow crab. And I think your listeners will find this interesting as well. So it's illegal for inshore harvesters in this province, as you know, to strike under a law. That's the Fishing Industry Collective Bargaining Act. It's meant to ensure smooth, uninterrupted commercial fisheries. So that's why they're not allowed to strike. That's why there's no job action. Well, there is job action, but the FFAW will pay for that, apparently. So they brought in final offer selection under the Fishing Industry Collective Bargaining Act for smooth, uninterrupted fisheries. At the same time, and this is my point, plant workers can legally strike. So, and that basic irony underscores one monumentally screwed up fishery. So we have two crab plants operated by OCI in Bonavista and Triton. Now, they could take a strike vote as early as next week. The workers are represented by the FFAW. The union also represent workers at Beothic Seafoods. Now, they've got a plant in Valleyfield, and a strike vote could be held there as early as May the 19th. The main issue is reportedly money at all the plants. But again, my point is that 3 snow crab plants may be on strike at the same time that there's already a backlog. Processing companies are just now introducing trip limits and fishing schedules. So you have one sector that can strike, plant workers, represented by the FFAW. Another sector can't strike, harvesters, also represented by the union. None of this makes sense, Patty. So this review that the Premier spoke about a month or so ago, a complete review, including of competition in the fishery, that can't come soon enough, because when you add all of this up, it doesn't make any sense.
The grading conversation is age-old, and it certainly shouldn't be the way. It's the way it comes out of the water. When it exchanges from the harvester to whoever it is, the buyer, the processor, it should be graded upon that exact moment, as opposed to any time later for whatever reason, regardless of the safety or the efficiency of transport.
Hallelujah. I could not agree more, Patty. And I've got one final point, and this point I want to make about the co-op, the Fisheries Protective Co-op that I'm helping to organize. So the co-op has identified several dozen independent enterprise owners, and I've done this. We've done this in the past week. Collectively, these several dozen independent enterprise owners, they have upwards of 2.5 million pounds of product. They're eager for a new buyer, particularly, as I said, with trip limits and fishing schedules staring them in the face. So we've approached St. Mary's Bay Fisheries. They've had their, and you know this too, Patty, they've had their processing capacity increased this year by 3 million pounds. We're hoping that they'll take on harvesters who are ready and willing and able to sell their product to a new buyer. And I guess my main point here is the ball is in the court of St. Mary's Bay Fisheries. Hopefully there is nothing stopping them from buying from our independent enterprise owners in a free and competitive industry that I'd like to think we have, but obviously we don't. But we'll see whether or not these independent harvesters can move freely between processors. We'll see that now in the next few days coming up.
That we will. Anything else before I get to the news, Ryan?
No, just to say thank you very much for the time and have a good weekend.
You too. Thanks for the call. Take care.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, there we go. Very quickly checking on the Twitter before we do indeed get to the news break coming up at 11 here on your VOCM. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Always a good day to get on the program. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. We're taking a break, and then we're coming back.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 6, Otto, you're on the air.
Oh, Paddy.
Press Klein today. Thank you. How are you doing?
Oh, number one, boy.
Good man.
What do you think of hockey?
Well, one thing for sure is I really, really, really want to watch Edmonton and Vancouver. I watched game 1, but it's on too late. But I'm enjoying it. Terrific.
Oh, that's my team, Edmonton. I stays up. I go to bed early and gets up around 12.
A lot of my buddies are Edmonton fans. I mean, given the fact that we grew up when they were a dynasty. So I got a bunch of buddies who are Edmonton fans.
Yeah. The goalie the other night played a lousy game, though.
Needless to say. I mean, 3 goals in 5 or 6 minutes? Not good enough. Yeah. And, compare that to the Rangers goaltender, who was unbeatable. Man, he's standing on his head, Shurskin, or however you pronounce it.
I got to say, hats off to the Breakers. They don't have a decent job. They got in to go silver, not the gold medal, but the silver, eh?
Yeah, they lost in the final at the Allen Cup. Lost to a team, the Dundas Real McCoys, who are super strong. I even recognize some of the names of the players on that team. But good on the Breakers. They gave it a good run.
Yeah, they won last year, I think. Perry, I'm talking about the maintenance of the... Gee, the highways don't do no maintenance on the Transcanada no more. Man, you leave Jigger there with Herbie there by Carnival there, and you go around the turn. There's a washout there. I say you can put a load of crushed stone there, and they put the pole on there. They've been there for a year now, probably. Man, it's unreal. And down naked man, there's a rock there like a man, eh? There's what do you call it there? Cliffs. And the ditch is all filled up with the cliff falling down from up above. And it should be scaled, eh? Because what's going to happen, you're going to be flood of rain. You're going to have a big lot of rock on the French Gunner. Probably someone getting killed, right? But they don't do nothing. No ditching, no brush cutting or nothing. Only place, well, I was out to St. John a few days ago. Only place I seen on the Transcontinental was out in Daniland. They got the Transcontinental changed, right?
Yeah, there's a bit of... I encountered some highway work. I was in and out of Central a couple of days ago, and they're doing a little bit around here, but needless to say, the state of the roads is deplorable. It is call a spade here. And even in the city, I think some people think that, all the attention gets focused in and around some of the major populated centres. I can tell you in no uncertain terms, the streets in and around here and the roads in and around here are beat. Absolutely beat.
John Abbott, as far as I'm concerned, should resign because they're not doing nothing. I don't know who's the manager in Claremont now, but I know he don't be singing. I haven't seen him for years. Man, oh man, that's unreal. My God.
Yeah, and I think, and the government will say, well, this year they're going to spend an unprecedented amount of money on road work, some $235 million this year, which is a lot. But whether or not that work all gets done this paving season, I guess remains to be seen. I don't know how it's going to work. But they're... go ahead, Otto.
You drive, Paddy, you drive from Agetown to Depot. My God, it's unreal. The whole thing. Man, there's I don't know how they plow the snow. How the work goes on the dump truck there, right? The flyers, Man, oh man, the road's gone. And no maintenance done, no brush cut, no ditching, and nothing.
Yeah, the brush cut is, I think, another separate issue that really deserves a bit more attention. I know it's not going to be the be-all and end-all, but it's certainly a major help if we're trying to protect ourselves against moose in particular. Just a fighting chance to see the animal coming gives you at least an opportunity to, break or to avoid or to do whatever. But when some of the alders are right up on the shoulder of the road, you have literally no chance. I mean, that animal will be in your windshield in a heartbeat.
Well, you leave Carnival and go to Deep Boys. There used to be trees growing up on the shoulder road, and now the flyer cut them down with the wing blade. Only for that, I mean, it's unreal. I don't know what's going on with the maintenance. No maintenance at all. I mean, you got to look after your road. You ditch a day. You get a flood of rain, you're going to have some washouts. They put up a pole on. You could be there for 2 or 3 years before they... Man, oh man, I don't understand it.
Me neither, Otto. I appreciate the time. Hope you're doing well. Enjoy the hockey.
Well, you come in, buddy. Drop in someday.
Yeah, I actually drove right past Clarenville, but of course I was in a bit of a rush. I had to get out to Gander Tuesday evening to get back for Wednesday afternoon, so I didn't have time this go around, but I will. Sometime in the future, I absolutely will. I'll give you a heads up.
Come, Paddy boy, you're welcome to stop. 27.
I appreciate your time, Otto. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. All the best. All right, there he goes. My buddy out in Clarenville. Let's go to line number 5. Durant Felix, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. How you doing?
Doing okay. Sorry about yesterday. Just couldn't hear you. The connection was poor.
Yes. It's what you get for expensive cell coverage, but poor service.
I get it.
Yeah. I just want to continue on the conversation we started yesterday with regards to this the green energy hype with regarding hydrogen and the hype behind it. So yesterday I was bringing up the fact that 80% of that ammonia that's going to be developed or produced is going to be essentially turned into fertilizers, and I brought up the fact about the nitrous oxide emissions that will come from that, and when you look at tests that some countries have done, such as Europe, where they're combining hydrogen with natural gas, to increase the efficiency and lower the CO2 emissions. Unfortunately, the side effect from that is that it also increases the nitrous oxide emissions, which in this case, in using hydrogen, is 6 times more potent than that of methane. And so,
well, it's 300 times worse than carbon dioxide itself. So
no, it's not. No, I'm sorry, that's incorrect.
What's that?
That number I quoted yesterday, about 300%, is actually nitrous oxide in itself is 300 times more potent.
That's what I just said.
Carbon dioxide.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Sorry.
But
okay,
my confusion with this concern, though, Duran, is regardless if they used the ammonia that was used to ship hydrogen across from, say, the port of Stephenville to Germany, the fact of the matter is, if they're going to use fertilizer anyway, regardless of the source, that doesn't change the water on the beans. So I'm not sure what that has to do with this particular proposal in this province, because they're going to use fertilizer from some source somewhere in the world, regardless if it came from here. So that's what I'm not entirely sure what the relation is.
Well, if we're going to use that argument, then then we're essentially saying, well, we might as well do it because someone else is going to do it, right?
No, that's not the point at all.
They're pushing it off as being green, and that's the thing. The only thing that's green about this whole thing is the actual wind that's blowing. When you look at the footprint that all these turbines are going to take up, you're looking at for all the proposals from Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and whatnot, they're up to about 3,000 turbines. Each one takes up about 12 acres, and right now forests and wetlands and that, each acre absorbs anywhere from 4 to 40 tons of CO2 per year. And so when you look at that, not including the roadways and that they'd have to build, you're looking at a capacity at the lowest scale of 166,000 tons of CO2 being absorbed a year, upwards to 1.5 million tons of CO2 being absorbed per year. Now, when you look at, they're talking about lowering CO2 emissions. Yes, CO2 emissions stay in the air a bit longer. Over a 20 to 200 year period, 65 to 85% of CO2 gets absorbed by the oceans and other systems. Now, methane lasts about 12 years in the atmosphere, and nitrous oxide lasts up to 110 years. Now, that's a short lifespan compared to CO2. But the big killer between methane and nitrous oxide is that they're also ozone depleting. So we're looking at increasing that production. And when you look at, all the policies that have come out by governments within regards to farmers and farming and why they've gotten on their cases about using fertilizer, nothing's ever been mentioned about bringing down the nitrous oxide levels. Matter of fact, that was conveniently left out of the Montreal Protocol that was back, I believe, in 1987. And so there's been no real regulation on that. And what's scary is when you look at the studies that are being done, is that with the current trajectory for nitrous oxide emissions from things such as ammonia, fertilizer, and the hydrogen industry as a whole, they're looking at, for the next century, trying to keep the temperature at 1.5 degree increase minimum. Well, with the additional stress that the nitrous oxide is going to put on the system, the International Panel on Climate Change are predicting that we're going to be looking at temperatures of increase of 3 degrees. And so...
But the nitrous oxide conversation is a standalone, because it has very little to do with the proposal here. And this is not shrugging it off, because I know it's absolutely real. I understand the implications of nitrous oxide. But the fact of the matter is, the fertilizer concern has very little to do with this particular proposal. And in this country, there's actually been all sorts of opt-in programs to use different methods to fertilize the fields as opposed to traditional fertilizers as we understand them. So that's where I'm a bit of a loss here. Oh, yeah. Regardless of where the fertilizer came from, it's being used.
Oh yeah, and I agree with that. Now there's things on the go to minimize, the nitrous oxide output from fertilizers by encasing it in urea and stuff like that, and having farmers put it in at a different time. But that's one thing. That's the farming aspect of it. But when you start burning it as a fuel, then you're putting out additional nitrous oxide. And so if you're burning ammonia right now, the only feasible thing that they can see for using ammonia for as a fuel would be in huge tankers, because ammonia is difficult to burn, and they have to use what's called a selective catalytic reduction system, which are enormous. And the only vessels out there that can actually accommodate the setup, it requires so much space that it's only feasible on tankers. Right?
There's all sorts of uses for ammonia, though. I mean, there
is all sorts of use for ammonia. But when you start using it as a fuel, because it's hydrogen based, once you start using it as a fuel and you start burning it, and when you look at the potency, so if you're looking at people having hydrogen cars, burning hydrogen in factories and whatnot, so what you're going to be doing is actually increasing the levels of nitrous oxide out there.
That's only if
you've gone from just using it as
a
fertilizer,
that's not accurate,
you're going to be using it across industry.
But that's not accurate.
Excuse me?
That's not accurate, though.
That's not accurate.
Because you don't have to incorporate ammonia as a shipping medium in every hydrogen production. That's just not true. I mean, it's being used here because it's being shipped long distances, power loss and the like. So not every bit of hydrogen produced needs to incorporate any ammonia for shipping purposes. That's just not the reality. I do know that what you're describing is obviously problematic, but ammonia is a household cleaner. They use it in explosives, pesticides, textiles, plastics. 80% of it, I think, is absolutely used for fertilizer. But the incorporation of ammonia here does not have to mean that every bit of hydrogen produced in this world is going to use ammonia to ship it around.
No, I didn't say that. I said that the only feasible place that it could be used as a fuel would be in tankers because of the complexity of the equipment required
to minimize the emissions from that. That's what I was saying. I didn't say that it would be used as a fuel or whatever source everywhere else. That's twisting what I've said, and I don't appreciate that. When you look at the overall aspect of this, because we're pushing this, it's being pushed as a green solution, a green, as green, when in fact none of this is green. It's not. And so just because someone else is doing it, and just because, it's going to get used anyways, to me that is a weak argument from any government, any company.
But it literally has nothing to do with this proposal.
But we're looking at our CO2 emissions right now. And, so everyone's going to say, well, we'll keep burning fuel because everyone else is doing this, everyone else is doing that.
But that's not what that means. It's not. And, I mean, you just were upset with me for twisting your words, which I didn't, but yet you continually twist mine. So, I mean, I'm not playing tit for tat here.
I don't believe in twisting your words. I'm just putting out there what these projects are failing to address. Yes, they're going to lower their CO2 emissions, but in doing so, they're touting it as CO2, no more CO2 or lower CO2 and whatnot, but nothing has been mentioned about any of these projects about the effects that the additional nitrous oxide emissions are going to have on the environment. And when you consider that, we have our forests and everything else that absorb all this, a lot of the CO2 and that's out there and help to regulate it, that's one thing that's being overlooked, and the natural environment that's there. And so I'm not, like I said, I'm not against green energy and stuff like that, but if they're going to be putting it out there, it should be a full conversation on not just one gas they're concentrating on, such as CO2. There should be something out there to say, okay, how are they going to mitigate the effects of nitrous oxide? When you consider that it is an ozone-depleting gas, and we know what happens when the ozone starts to deplete. CO2 doesn't do that; it absorbs more heat, but it's not an ozone-depleting gas. As a matter of fact, CO2 is referred to as the gas of life. The more CO2 that's in the atmosphere, the greener the trees get, the greener the grass get. Forests are actually starting to recover from that. Well, that's the opposite effect when you look at methane and, in this case, nitrous oxide emissions. So, essentially what are we doing? Are we, cutting off our noses to spite our faces just to, under the guise of a greener future, right?
The tag of green in this case is the tag of green hydrogen, because that's just a simple definition that existed well before these proponents ever came to town. It's about using renewables to create the hydrogen, not that it is green as opposed to black or brown or blue hydrogen. It's all based on the source to generate the power to create the hydrogen through electrolysis. So that's how green gets applied here.
And I agree with that, but the problem is, we both understand that, and a lot of other people understand that too. But when it gets thrown out there and it's advertised and it's pushed by the companies and it's pushed by businesses and whatnot, that part of green gets left. It gets muddled. And when people hear green, because we've been conditioned by the media, by businesses, by whatnot, to think of green as everything in general, right? It's green, it's safe, it's wonderful, it's all this, but when you're looking at the production process, yes, and I agree with that. Yes, it's green. When the wind blows, yes, you're going to get energy. But then for the infrastructure you put in, and that part of it, you have to look at the negative effects that has. So that in itself isn't totally green. And so there needs to be a lot more clarity out there so people could fully understand what they're allowing companies to come in and do and what they're allowing to have in their backyards. And that's where the real concern comes in. Is the word of green, I find, is thrown around rather loosely, and
there's no such thing as green energy. We might as well get that out. There is no such thing in this world as green energy. Everything has some sort of component that is less than green. Solar, wind, tidal power, everything comes with some sort of mineral that has to be extracted. Consequently, there's no such thing as 100% green. The word should be greener. Greener than something else. A comparison as opposed to a declaration.
And I agree with that. There's always something better, and maybe that's the way it should be put out there. It should be put out there for people to fully understand.
Duran, I do have to get going. 30 seconds before I have to go.
Okay, no problem. I just want to thank you for your time.
I appreciate yours.
And have a good weekend.
The very same to you. Thank you. All right, take care. Let's take that break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. So give more to the Director of Fund Development with the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association, Newfoundland and Labrador. That's Terry Martin. Terry, you're on the air.
Hello, Patty, and good morning, and another great show.
Thank you.
You're covering a lot of ground there, and great job. Well done, my friend.
Appreciate it, Terry. What's going on?
Okay, well, I just want to thanks for giving me the time. It's a reminder that midnight tonight is the last time to get in on our 50/50 Ultimate Lottery. It's just a simple little lottery that we have, and it's well priced, and of course it supports our programs. And right now the jackpot just crossed $192,000, and that's a nice little prize to take away. And of course, midnight tonight is the last chance to buy your tickets. So I appreciate you giving me the chance to let your listeners know. A little reminder.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think it's always worthwhile to give a little additional information about, how and why these major fundraisers are so important, because it's becoming difficult. The prize has to be appetizing or appealing. The programs that you offer, they're not free of charge to the association. So just give the folks the Coles notes about just how important this one is for your organization.
Well, we certainly rely on fundraising almost 99%. We do get I don't mind saying, a small grant from the government, and it comes in at around $13,000 a year, and that's it. So what we do is completely self-funded. We've developed programs and services, to help mitigate, the effects of hearing loss. And we do have a staff that they go right across the island, and indeed, almost all of our programs are delivered free of charge. And probably some of the most popular ones are, we have a lending loaner program where people can borrow, different hearing aid devices and assistive listening devices where that can help them to, their own daily lives. And of course, we lend those out free of charge. We have hearing screening tests that we have the booth here, and we can screen to let you know if you do have a hearing loss and where you should go from there after that. Our speech reading programs are becoming very, very popular. And of course, we have a number of support groups that are always ongoing for all different ages. But, the biggest thing when it comes to hearing loss is just the isolation effect that it has. And it affects your job, your life, your family. And, the program services we have, help mitigate that. And that's where the funding goes. And it's absolutely amazing that, we have to rely on fundraising like this to reach so many people, because one of the stats that scares me more than anything else is, approximately 20% of young people entering post-secondary education have some form of hearing loss. And, that's a scary number. And, we need to let people know. And of course, the outreach and the marketing that we do, that's what all these fundraisers do is help us to reach people and let them know what they can do and how we can help and how it impacts your life.
I appreciate the time, Terry. Give the folks the where, the when, what they have to do to pick up a tick.
Okay, again, it's our jackpot right now is $192,000. I think right now we're probably going to hit 200. That's an amazing prize. Go to 5050ultimate.com. And, of course, we have Susan and Irene will be manning the phones tonight. And that there's 709-800-6118. And again, buy early, buy often. They're $10 each, $3 for $25, or 15 tickets for $50. Well priced and great prize. And again, thank you for your time, Patty.
I appreciate yours. Good luck with it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Terry. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Terry Martin, Director of Fund Development with the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association of Newfoundland and Labrador. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, appreciate the patience of those in the queue. We'll get to you right after this.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Dr. Frances Scully. You're on the air.
Hello. Hi, Patty. Can you hear me?
Not too bad. If you have us on speaker, we would appreciate it if you take us off. It'd be better.
Okay. I don't think so. Sorry. Is that okay? Can you hear
sure.
me now?
Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Very exciting show, and thanks to all the people out there trying to work on so many different issues. Thanks for including me. I'm sorry, this is very late, actually, but I just wanted to share with people, and I sent you an email, Paddy, that this Sunday on Mother's Day, there are many mothers groups working everywhere. There's Women Ways Peace. There's a whole bunch of different groups who are working very hard to call for, an end to the bloodbath and the famine in Gaza, an immediate ceasefire, exchange of hostages, and, all the necessary supplies, because so many people are at risk. Well, so many people have been killed, injured, but so many people are at risk of death from famine right now. And, of course, always it is children and women who suffer most in all these situations. So this is very important for Mother's Day. And so I wanted to mention there's going to be an online, this is the 19th year of a joint remembrance service for organised by Palestinians and Israelis to remember all the different people. And I'm not saying, of course, it's mostly Palestinians, but a lot of Israelis also have died. And it is, so this is a memorial service. It's happening in our time. It's virtual. It's happening at 3 o'clock, and it's happening with people all over the world. And I will just read from Aisha Khatib. She's a mother and a Palestinian, and this is what she says. My name is Aisha, and I'm a Palestinian. I write to you from Nablus under the weight of the occupation and its daily challenges. I express my experience as a mother and unite with all mothers who aspire to a future free from the shackles of injustice. Our daily lives are marked by struggle and resilience as we navigate checkpoints, restrictions, and the constant presence of armed occupation forces.
Hello?
Yet, amidst the difficulties, our spirits remain unbroken, fueled by the determination to secure a better tomorrow for our children. Occupation casts its long shadows over our hopes and dreams, but it also ignites within us a steadfast resolve to resist injustice and advocate for the rights of all Palestinians. In Gaza, West Bank, every day bears witness to the resilience of our people in the face of catastrophe, with each moment carrying hope for a future of liberty. As a mother, I'm deeply committed to the future of all children. The joint memorial ceremony reminds us of the precious lives lost, regardless of nationality or ethnicity. It sheds light on the urgent need to end the occupation and bloodshed and create a path towards peace and reconciliation. And there's also a joint Nakba remembrance ceremony, which deeply resonates with my soul. Liberation means reclaiming our dignity, rights, and sovereignty as a people. It means dismantling systems of oppression and injustice that have inflicted our communities for far too long. Ending the war, ending the occupation, and liberation is not just about political freedom. It's also about healing the wounds of trauma and rebuilding our collective identity. It's about ensuring a safe and stable future for our children, a peaceful and sustainable future where all children of this land can live without fear or oppression through education, dialogue, and grassroots actions. We can begin to pave a path towards a more just and equal future for all. I am committed to adding my voice to these important ceremonies and, most importantly, to peace, justice, and freedom for all. And this is from Aisha Khatib, who's the mother of Khalil, Nancy, Rawan, Nisreen, and Murad. And she's a Palestinian activist in Nablus. And she's one of the organisers, along with, I can read more if you want, but
no, that's okay.
I don't know how much time there is. Yeah.
No, there's limited time, unfortunately. We're creeping up against 12 o'clock. And I mean, the Israeli death toll, for starters, this did not start on October the 7th. October the 7th is the impetus for this most recent invasion. And we should get that out there. The Israeli death toll on the 7th is around 1,100 plus. There's still dozens of people that have been held hostage. So, you know, to recognize that the lack of humanity on either side of this equation should be, you know, a big part of the conversation. And very much like what's happening in Ukraine, the focus is on being either pro or against one side or the other versus any really meaningful conversation about how there's a peaceful off-road or off-ramp here for either of these conflicts. And they're not the only two conflicts happening in the world. The world is a tinderbox. It's boiling over. And we just really do focus in on labeling one side or the other, however we see fit, based on political ideology, as opposed to any legitimate conversation about exactly why, how things are happening, and how there will be some sort of resolution sooner than later, because we all just get entrenched in our positions, and that really advances very, very little, in my personal opinion. I'll give you the final thoughts before I have to go this morning, Francis.
This is why I am selling this, because this is joint. So the other person speaking is an Israeli mother. So my name is Iris. I'm Israeli. My mother was a Holocaust survivor. My father was a military officer. I raised 3 children in Israel. 2 of them were soldiers in the Israeli army, and the youngest was a conscientious objector and was punished with 4 months in a military prison. For us Israelis, the week between Holocaust Remembrance Day and Memorial Day for IDF soldiers who died while serving and victims of terrorism is the most difficult week of the year. This year, after October 7, the testimonies of Holocaust survivors are mixed with the testimonies of the survivors of the massacres and at the joint memorial. So this is a joint memorial. So this is people on both sides of this divide who, despite having terrible losses themselves, are coming together and they have concrete ideas for how there can be peace and an end to this bloodshed. So that is the thing. There are people who are working from both sides, and as a long-term peace activist from Ireland, until you have everybody in the room talking, you're never going to have peace. And most importantly, until you have mothers and women, because generally, at the end of the day, it is mothers and women who don't want their children to die, who really push for peace.
I appreciate the time this morning. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Thanks, Patty. Have a great weekend.
The same to you. Take care. All right. One more before the break. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Heather Rowe. You're on the air.
Oh, hi, Patty. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks. How about you?
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm just calling in with some public service announcements for our little public library here in Whitburn. And we're having a seat swap this Saturday at 2 to 4. It's in the library or surrounding area of the library within the town of Whitburn. And, of course, our library supports a lot of catchment area around the Trinity Bay area. And we're in the Southern Shore. We support reading and programs for children, things like that. I've just joined the board. I'm a volunteer board member. And we're looking to raise funds, of course. But otherwise, we are looking to promote a large community of growers within our community and surrounding areas and provide a venue to obtain new variety of seeds for your garden. We encourage sharing and reduce seed wastage. We provide meeting place for like-minded gardeners or curious starters. There's social networking and learning opportunities, and it supports the initiative food security in our province for sure. So it also supports the Whitburn Library through membership and donation, and that's what we're encouraging today. If people want to bring their moms out for some new seeds or new variety of seeds, we're looking to diversify and make sure that things get grown all over the province, and anybody who collects seeds, of course, can come and use their own collected seeds to distribute. The event is free. The exchange is free. We do have some donation boxes, of course, and we have great raffle prizes. So they're up on tickets, and at the end of the day, we have some music, and we have it's a fun community event. There's some water. We have a little table that's run by the kids, and they're going to be filling up some little trays of soil that's available free for the first one, and then for purchase they can have their little trays of soil so they can plant their seeds if they're new growers and don't have any supplies. So we invite everyone out, and bring your moms, bring your dads, bring your children. It is going to be a nice day, I hope, as far as weather is concerned. If not, we are holding it in the library.
How long have you been doing this?
This is our first annual seed swap. Yeah, it's brand new, so we're hoping to have a big turnout. We've advertised a lot. We've been planning for quite some time, and hopefully we do have some people who are interested in, of course, supporting our library, which is it's kind of, we've forgotten about our libraries, I think, because of our World Wide Web. And they do provide very, very important services. One of them I just want to mention that perhaps people don't know is the NLPL Connect Pass. So that's Newfoundland Libraries, Public Libraries Connect Pass. And it's a pass that allows, once you sign up for a membership, which is free, you get the Connect Pass, and you get in free for a lot of events. So things like Admiralty House, there's lots of the Fluvarium, the Botanical Gardens at Memorial, Rogues Basketball, which was, North Atlantic Aviation Museum, the NSO, Opera on the Avalon, Parks Newfoundland, Provincial Historic Sites, Resource Centre for the Arts, The Rooms, St. John's International Women's Film Festival. So these are free with a membership. And I think once you use it, you would have to pay the second time, but at least it gives support for people who cannot usually get into these types of events. And thereby it's free for those people. And everyone in the community, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, usage of libraries still remains quite strong, but what has not kept up with use and the costs of replenishing, whether it be books or DVDs or any other source of material in the library, is funding. So, we find ourselves in a bit of a quagmire here. People still need and want to rely on public libraries, but public libraries themselves are struggling to do what they've done traditionally over the years, is to replenish and to renew and to refurbish the supplies in-house, and funding is the key on that front. Before we run out of time, Heather, anything else you'd like to say this morning?
Just to talk about how libraries are diversifying, and I know that CBS, I think, has a lending library for canning your products as far as gardening, bottling, and I think they have a few more other services like that and products like that you can borrow. So library is not the same as it was 40, 50 years ago. We have 3 libraries in town, and we have 29 libraries in the East Coast, 33 libraries in Central, and 29 in the West. So they're still operating, and they are definitely in need of funding for sure. So come out to our little library seat swap in Whitburn, and it's from 2 to 4 tomorrow.
I wish you good luck with the first annual.
Thank you so much, Patty.
Appreciate your time, Heather.
Day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Here we go. It's Heather Rowe with the Whitburn Public Library. Final break of the morning and the week. Leo, you're next to talk about aquaculture. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Leo, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Morning to you.
Yes, I wanted to comment briefly on the new study by DFO scientists, which was released in the last couple of weeks. And I heard Bob Bishop talking about it yesterday, and as well I heard Jamie Baker from the aquaculture industry responding this morning. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to make a few comments about it. First of all, that this is a comprehensive study. Jamie Baker kind of dismissed it because, as he said, there's no new science. But what's new about it is that this study looks at the Conn River over a 40-year period, for which time there was extensive collection of data from the fence that was there, from the counting of smolt and from angler logs, every factor that you could conceivably look at over a 40-year period. And then looking at all the factors that could possibly be contributing to the decline. And I think, as Bob mentioned, the decline was from, in the order of 7,000 or even higher. Some years there were 12,000 salmon returning to the Conn River. And in the last 3 or 4 years, the count barely gets up to 300. So looking at this system, as a population, a unique population, and all of the factors that could be contributing to this massive decline, what stands out. And it reminds me of one of the maxims that Sherlock Holmes used to use, and that is when you're looking at a crime or, any set of events, if you eliminate the impossible, then whatever is left, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. And that's the approach that's been taken in this study. It looks at actually 19 different factors, 3 of which were eliminated as not what, they were considered, but they were eliminated because they couldn't possibly be involved. But they were left with 16 factors, including agriculture, that could be a possible driver for this decline over such a long period. And after examining them all in minute detail, anybody who wants to look at the study, it's 27 pages long. And there's a tremendous amount of detail. And this is why the study is so valuable, because it looks at this over this long period of time in a very comprehensive way. And it shows, that what is left standing after you've done all the analysis and counted all the numbers is that the link to aquaculture, open net pen aquaculture, is basically the most likely driver. DFO is never going to absolute conclusions, but, it's the most likely. And that's what's important about it. Now, when Jamie was responding this morning, for example, about escapes, well, one of the authors of this study is Ian Bradbury, and he has written and published extensively, through peer-reviewed papers on the introgression that's occurred on the south coast in all of the rivers that have been examined. They examined some 19 rivers, and they found extensive introgression in 18 of them. So you can't dismiss that. That's the science, and basically this new paper is taking all of that into account. That's one of the things that they looked at. So you can't dismiss this study. And Jamie used the word, I think he gave the example of the year 2022, that there wasn't one salmon escaped. Well, he's wrong about that. What they actually reported was that there was one salmon that escaped. And when you think about it, for an industry that's handling millions and millions of salmon over the course of a production year, and they claim that only one salmon escaped, well, most people would say that's ridiculous, even to make that claim. But the key word in what Jamie said was reported. He left that out. That's what the industry reports. And basically that's what the government accepts. They don't examine it. There's no third-party study or identification on it. So reported is the operative word. And in any case, from the point of view of salmon escaping, the damage has already been done. The industry has been there for 40 years. And I think it was in 2013, they had an escape of some 23,000 to 26,000 salmon. So you don't need to have that kind of a number escaping every year for genetic damage to occur. That's already been done. It's like the old adage of, closing the door to the barn after the horse is gone. That's basically what they're doing. So I would say the real question before the Newfoundland government is, what are we going to do now? The plan that they have and what the Newfoundland government wants to do is they want to expand the industry to the west. So you have to remember that it's already gone in the easterly direction by the new Greek project in Sencha Bay, which is 7 million salmon a year. That's the capacity. But the industry that we already have, that we've had for the last 40 years, that industry has a capacity of 26,000 metric tons. Mm-hmm. If everything is working right, that's what they can produce.
And that's the plan.
They have actually come pretty close to that in a couple of years. But the industry has struggled. And, you only have to think about the mass mortalities, the impacts from infectious salmon anemia, and the impacts from sea lice. And that's the reason that, for example, in the last several years, the industry has collapsed down to just over or just under 8,000 metric tons. So that's, barely above a quarter of the installed capacity.
Leo, simply because we've just...
Anybody looking at an industry like that, farming or any kind of an industry that has... numbers that you can look at and analyze would say that, there's something fundamentally wrong when you can only produce at about a quarter of what the installed capacity is.
Leo, we've cleared 12 o'clock, so we'll have to leave it there, but I do appreciate your time. You're welcome to finish up your thoughts next week if you're so interested and inclined.
I appreciate the chance, Paddy.
Thanks, Leo. All the best. Okay, there we go. Very quickly, happy Mother's Day to you. And we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.